My name is Sinéad O'Neill-Nicholl and I'm an artist who lives and works in Belfast. My art practice usually consists of creating sound installations and live art, or performance art as it's sometimes known. I wasn't always an artist. For a long time I worked in the civil service, but I reached a point in my life when I realised that I wanted to do a job that I feel really passionate about. So I took a career break from my job and started working towards an art degree. I completed my degree in fine art and went on to do my master's. And that's when I became interested in the idea of using sound as a method of resistance. In this coming year, I'll be working with the families of those who were killed or injured in the McGurk bar bombing on the 4th of December 1971. As we approach the 50th anniversary of the bombing, I will be recording the personal memories of the family members and providing a space for them to remember their loved ones, to discuss the more personal aspects of grief and loss on them and on subsequent generations. Often an event like the bombing of McGurk's bar receives a lot of media attention, whether it's wanted or not, and there isn't often opportunities for people to share their personal memories away from the media framing, and I suppose that's what I wanted to help the families with. To give you a bit of background, in 2012, I was invited by Kieran McGurk, who's the grandson of Kathleen Irvine, who lost her life in the bomb, and her husband John, who was also injured in the bomb. He invited me to attend a screening of the film The Loss of Innocence, which is not an exaggeration to say that this changed my perspective on how we deal with legacy cases and the impact of these kind of events. Kieran is a long-term friend of mine and we spent our formative years together. We met over 30 years ago, and he is also the person who wrote the McGurk bar bombing book. He currently carries out legacy archive research for the McGurk's family, but also for other families that are involved in these type of investigations. We kind of lost touch for a while as adults, but we made contact again through the McGurk's bar website, where I was able to get in touch with Kieran, and this was when he invited me to the film screening. I'd always known that Kieran's grandmother was killed in the bomb, and I remember as a teenager my own mother telling me about the bomb and how it was obvious, at least to her, that the bomb had been planted at the bar, and the people in the bar were not making or transporting the bomb as was claimed in the media. She knew this for certain because her own father and his friend would often call into McGurk's. She knew that it was a family-run bar and that it had no connection to the IRA or any other organisation. That film screening had such a big impact on my own perception. There were moments when I audibly gasped at some of the things that were covered in the film. I developed a greater understanding that the impact this type of event could have on people. The reality of the bomb was laid bare, if you like. I began to really consider the effect on people through this kind of life-changing event. I listened to the stories of the families and I felt the reality of what had happened. There was a particular encounter that I had at the end of the screening when I spoke with one of the relatives. She shared something with me that I can honestly say has never left me. Her words touched me so deeply, and the enormity of what the families endured became very clear to me. At that point, I didn't really have a grasp on my own art practice, and I didn't really make any connection between what I was doing at that time and the McGurk's families. But as time went on and I became more knowledgeable about art as a political tool rather than a form of decoration, I began to think there was some way that I could connect with the families in a way that would offer them a sort of platform to tell their story. Even then, though, in the early stages, I wasn't really sure what that could be. It was only when I started doing my master's and started to work predominantly with sound recordings and become much more clear about what my own objectives were, I began to formulate a vague idea that could offer a potential collaboration with the families. Kieran and I met up several times to discuss the ideas that I was thinking about before he brought the ideas to the McGurk's committee, and I then had a meeting with them. It seems like a million years ago now, but it's probably only about a year and a half ago. And the committee responded quite positively to the ideas that I was proposing, which I'm hugely grateful for, because often for me, I approach ideas with a very vague idea of the outcomes. But that's because I know that things have a way of working themselves out. And over the course of the project, different things become more apparent. And I'm really glad that they decided to trust that I would be able to achieve something. Over the course of time, I've continued to develop my own skills and practice, which I must say have been hugely helped by funding from the Arts Council that's helped me engage in this project and supported me this year. COVID has obviously had a detrimental effect on the project to a degree. I had met with the committee in January of last year and was excited to start making recordings with the families, but this was severely hampered by lockdown. Initially, I kind of envisaged that I would meet with people in small groups and would record conversations that they were having, almost like you were eavesdropping into their conversation. But it was only really in November 2020 of this year that I was able to begin making recordings in earnest with some of the family members. And so far that's all being done by Zoom. It's not ideal, but I think the technology that I'm using really offers a unique opportunity. So this is going to create a geolocated audio installation at the former site of McGurk's Bar in North Queen Street. It's done through an app called Echoes Explorer. And if people have that app on their phone, they will be able to engage in a kind of audio experience made up of the recordings with the family members. As listeners move around the space, they'll discover different clips. It's a really innovative way to provide open and free access to everyone to engage with the project, and it's quite exciting. I've used it before, and initially I had some concerns about how it would work and if it would work on everyone's phone or if some people's phone wouldn't be able to cope with it. But actually, in reality, that's not the case. Most people's devices can pick up the recordings. There may be some discrepancies in the GPS, but for the most part, it works really well. This really resonates with me because I'm so interested in exhibiting art outside of galleries and making it more accessible to people who potentially would never go to an art gallery or would never feel comfortable there. This element of subversion and resistance is really what drives my practice and encourages me to keep making art. My influences are so wide-ranging, but they often explore these topics of resistance and activist type movements. I'm interested in the writings and actions of people, largely American, Black American women, Angela Y. Davis, Bell Hooks and Audre Lorde, but also the fictional writing of James Baldwin, for example. And as well as that, I'm interested in sonic art practices, so the work of Brandon Labelle, who specifically explores sound as a method of resistance. And as soon as I discovered this, I knew that this was exactly the type of work that I wanted to create. I'm also interested in artists like Lawrence Abu-Hamdan, who creates amazing audio installations and such a highly respected sound expert that he is often been called to give evidence in high-profile criminal trials. Susan Phillips is another huge influence, particularly in relation to her sound pieces, which are quite often experienced in the public realm. They're so haunting and emotive, and I think that's going to be quite an important development for me going forward. But most of all, and I have particularly connected to the artist Helen Kamak, specifically in making this work Never the Same. I became interested in Helen's work, The Long Note. Helen Kamak was commissioned by Void Gallery in Derry to create a piece of work based on the women's civil rights movement in Northern Ireland. It's a great film, and it really contains those elements of personal experience and little clips, but it also combines with the political, and that's definitely something that really interests me. I've heard Helen Kamak speak about this work and her doubts in relation to whether she was the right person to deliver it. Being a Jamaican, British-born artist, she wasn't sure how she could create this work, I suppose, but I really like the way she talked about it, and I feel that that's what I'm doing. It's not my story to tell. The families will tell their story, and I'll just be able to convey that to the world, I suppose. I don't want to manipulate the recordings or alter the meaning or reinterpret what the families are discussing. I just want them to present the families as they are. I've intentionally left in little snippets of how people speak naturally. For example, a lot of people here have a habit of saying, "Do you know what I mean?" when they finish a sentence. And I've left those pieces in the work so that people can feel a connection to that. I want the work to have that flow and to create that sense that they could be speaking about anybody, someone you know or someone you used to know. If anyone wants to experience the installation in person, they can download the Echoes Explorer app on their smartphone or tablet. They can visit the site of McGurk's Bar in North Queen Street, make sure the location settings are turned on their device, and they can move around the space to access the recordings that have been uploaded so far. In my experience, most phones are able to cope with the streaming element involved using the app, but if you're worried that your phone won't be up to this, You can download the talk directly to your device prior to visiting the site. You can also experience elements of the sound online via my Vimeo account, the link to which is available on the Imagine Festival website. And over the course of this coming year, I'll continue to add more recordings to the app and be working towards a larger, hopefully in-person type event. But in the meantime, I hope you all enjoy it. Thank you.